Well, welcome to the Uncommon Truth. Steve and Vicky, it's good to have you guys back.
Thanks.
after a week. What did you guys do? Where were you guys at last week?
I was here trying to do a podcast.
No, you weren't.
No, I was
Goofball.
I was out of town.
When my
we had a
baby
good
smiles
time.
at me, we go to Reno.
We go to Reno.
Yeah.
We did. We went to Reno.
Okay.
Got away for a few days. It was
We
good.
always take our son Mark, who has Down syndrome. That's his
Birthday trip.
Birthday trip. We take him to Reno, and he gets his own room. He thinks he's Kevin McAllister on Home Alone.
Oh,
Yeah, he does.
So from 23 stories high, we could look at the pool and see Mark. We could see
Yeah.
him swimming in the
Yeah.
pool. He
Really?
just goes on. Yeah, he goes by himself, and he makes his own food, and he just thinks he's living the high life.
Okay.
So it was fun.
Yep.
I
We had
got
a good
to
time.
follow you guys on Instagram and
Yeah.
see it's a couple of months late, right? Because you had to delay it because
Yeah,
of
March
COVID and all
24th.
that.
Yep.
Okay, so Mark is always asking to be on the podcast. So for now, we'll say happy birthday, Mark.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Mark.
Belated birthday.
Does he listen?
I don't know. He just wants to be on the podcast.
Correct.
He doesn't necessarily want to listen
Yeah,
to the
that's
podcast.
That's right. Only if he was on it.
He thinks it's video because we do video announcements at
Yeah.
church, right? And
Yeah.
so sometimes I'm on the video announcements and I tell people at church about the upcoming events. And I think he thinks they're kind of the same because he asked me when am I going to get him on the podcast?
Hysterical.
And so
Mark
maybe
is
we should have.
Mark is a 37-year-old Down syndrome man.
But
That-
he's like amazing.
Mark
so
on a
smart.
podcast though would be quite the adventure.
Well,
Yeah.
he's drew some pretty big crowds when we had him on the church live stream during COVID land when we were going live
was
from
funny.
the house every night, and that was some of our biggest viewership, right? Most
Yeah.
engagement was people
Yeah.
wanted to
true.
hear.
And if
his
you want to know who Mark
stories.
is, you just Google Down syndrome man who lost videos in fire. And I think his video, when he sees these, what the world did for him when he lost all of his videos in our fire, it's a pretty cool video. 40,
yeah,
I think
that
40
was his
million
thing,
people.
right?
Yep.
He loved his movie collection,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they all burned up.
Yep. So the video is, if you want to see it, it's I think 40 million people have viewed it. So
Okay.
he is a viral star.
Well, maybe I'll
What are you
link
laughing
that.
at me for?
That
Maybe
was
I'll
easy for you to say.
I know.
maybe I'll link that in the show description so you
There you
guys can
go.
go watch it.
Yeah, it's cool.
So once again, we're here on video, and we're in podcast land, and we're having our best month of the podcast yet. So
Oh,
if
wow.
Really?
you're listening out there,
Thank
And
you.
it's not even over yet.
no, it's not
Wow.
even over. Best month so far. So if you are listening and you know somebody who would enjoy conversations like this, you got something to
You
learn
started
from
to say
Steve and
entertaining, and
Vicky.
they thought, nah,
Well, they
not
are
really
entertaining with you guys.
Yeah, I guess when you get your definition of entertaining around.
Yeah, it's
how
a
you
little
want-
a little
how
bit
you
on the
want it.
Jerry
Easy for
Springer
you to
side of
say.
things sometimes.
Come on, man.
But
Let's get
you can go to uncommonpodcast.com.
There you go.
And that's where you can get the subscribe to the podcast.
Love it.
And that'll take you where if you're listening on an iPhone or an Android or a Google phone or whatever type of phone you got or computer, it'll take you there. And if you want to see the shirt that Steve is wearing that Vicky brought him to change into 5 minutes ago, you can watch us on YouTube. Switch over to that. And you can watch us.
Watching us on
drink
YouTube is
coffee
a
and try
little
to
is a
talk
little
at the same
weird.
time.
Watching Steve and I on the video podcast YouTube.
Well, we have about 40-minute conversation, and sometimes we forget, all three of us, we forget that we're on video. And so
yeah,
it's kind of funny. You yawn because
Yeah.
you're like, well, the mic's not going to pick it up if I go over here.
I know, and
But-
we won't say what Steve does.
I fall asleep when you guys are talking.
Well, that's not great for
Probably
trying to
should-
get people to
Boy,
listen.
this is an
sure
exciting
that.
podcast.
Yeah.
Even the guy on the podcast
It's so
falls
entertaining.
asleep.
I'm telling you, man. I'm out there working in
Oh,
105
geez.
today.
Where's the-
It's
where's the
crazy.
violin?
What are you working on actually? So
Yeah.
We
the
went into the
church.
campground. We're building a campground. I went in today. I've been caught up. I taught a class this morning, had a marriage counseling.
Heard it was good.
Run around trying to buy the product to go out and do it. And by the time I get out there, it's smoking hot. And
It's gonna be 105
we're
today.
building these floors. And then if anyone has built, they know that a floor, when you're building a floor, the heat reflects up in your face.
Yeah.
So we're building these floors, and it was smoking hot. Did I say that already?
3 times.
Yeah, okay. And so when I come in here and I sit down and all of a sudden we're in air conditioning and we're talking.
Blame
I'm
it on
just
the
like-
bossa
I'm
nova.
just like, just, crashing.
Yeah.
Steve,
So
it
let's
was 75 degrees the last time you fell asleep when Max and I were talking.
I don't think so.
75 or
In
80.
here it was 75, but I was out there.
Don't you believe
that
it?
time I was working on the church and it was smoking hot.
Oh, you're
We
right.
Yeah.
forgot.
Okay.
Well,
So-
that's all right. We'll always have some reason to fall asleep.
I always
during
have an
the show.
excuse, right?
He's been married 41 years and he's very old.
Yes, I've been married. Yeah, that is probably the two biggest
And
reasons.
if you want to hear more about their marriage, you can go listen to the last podcast we recorded live, which was episode 54
That's
about
right.
marriage
You
and
could
dating.
only wish to have a marriage so good.
And if you would like to have it, you can go listen to the podcast.
That's right.
We can teach you how.
Today we're going to be talking about something that's sort of a buzzword right now, which is change, and that's all over the place. You can't change the channel, you can't turn on Instagram, you can't swipe on Facebook without seeing people rallying for change about something.
Right, correct.
Depending on your friend group, and it could be lots of different things, but everybody wants to change.
Right.
And so I've been thinking this week and a little bit last week, since we put a pre-recorded message on, I've been thinking about change and what does Jesus say about change and how to get change. And it sort of struck me that Jesus' definition of change is a lot different than ours, where we want to change culture, so we point out the problems.
Oh, that's good.
That they're the problem, or they're the problem, or that institution is the problem. Or our church isn't feeding us, so we say, well, the elders are the problem, or the worship is the problem, or the community we're in is a problem. And I never see Jesus saying, well, the problem's with all of this and this and this and this, without first saying,
wow,
I'm going to show you a different way, or
Get the log out of
anything
your
like
eye.
that. So Jesus changed the entire world, right? How did he do that?
He sacrificed himself. And he lived the truth he called us to live, to love one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the number one issue, and I am a record with a scratch. I just keep saying the same thing over and over and over. It is about selfishness versus unselfishness, or better put, selflessness versus selfishness. And it really is, the definition boils down to love versus hate. And when you see this kind of anger and polarity, it is just pure, it's a spirit of hate and death and selfishness, born out of selfishness. And I think that the Jesus changed the world by being humble and selfless. Came as a humble carpenter's son, born, even in his own town, they knew he was conceived out of wedlock.
Wow.
And he came as someone to be cursed, born out of wedlock in his society. That was a complete, you're like less than. And, Mary's saying it, but it was the Holy Spirit,
boy.
and they weren't really into that in those days. They didn't buy that. Today you say it, people say amen, but she said it was she didn't tell anyone, but if she had tried to defend herself, Joseph defended her. But Jesus was born into this absolutely totally humble place, the King of the universe, God in the flesh, born humbly and lived humbly. And even in his preaching, he showed those people how to get to the Father, how to lay down their lives. And we look back at those disciples and how many of them were martyred for their faith, and we get kind of scared and nervous. But from Jesus's point of view, when he laid out their lives to be martyred, and when he helped them be martyred in their lives, he was giving them this great gift of this eternal blessing. We just see things so today, so now.
One-dimensional.
So one-dimensionally now. And it's all about what I want, and you better change, you better change, you better change. And really the only way that change can come is if I am the way I believe it should be. If I am good and kind and merciful, and I say it is my responsibility, I am my brother's keeper, then I have a chance to at least change a very small circle. Now here at the Father's house, that circle's gotten bigger, and I have the affection and love of many. And because I get out there with them and sweat with them, and I walk alongside of them and show them how to do it and lay my life down, then you watch. They're all laying their life down for one another. Vicki and I marvel at it. They're constantly serving each other. You guys are constantly taking care of each other.
Yeah.
A single girl with 2 children, had to move the other day. And she's in there packing up, trying to take care of these small twins. And people just move her. Like, boom, everybody moved me. I heard, a lot of people moved at that weekend. And people just showed up and moved them. They served
I moved.
them.
Yeah.
You're one of the movers. Yeah. You moved and people helped you, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, they said put it in boxes and
boom,
and it will be in your new place.
But this you lay down your life for people, and they lay down their life for others. And the kind of the movie Pay It Forward wasn't that great a movie, but the phrase "pay it forward," just if people you want to see change, you be humble and give your life away. You live to serve, and do good. It's also nice to have a good perspective to see that you're not just wasting. Because what I've seen is people who do that and they're taken advantage of, they quit and they never do it again. They tell you stories. 20 years ago, I was at the food bank every day, but then I got taken advantage of. It's like, yeah, then you were probably there for the wrong reason. You were there to feed yourself. A pat on the back, a good feeling, but be there for the reason of helping them.
Yeah.
I was there to feed the hungry, and the hungry got fed. I got treated like crap. Not one homeless person was nice to me feeding them. That might be someone's experience. Well, I'm not there for them to be nice to me. I'm there to feed them.
That's good.
And they got fed. And so when you give not to receive. You give for the sake of giving. You do for the sake of doing. You lay down your life to be like Jesus. And I'll guarantee you the world will change. We haven't seen a lot of societies like that in a while. We haven't even seen a lot of small groups like that in a while. And I think the Church of Jesus Christ in the Western world gave up its right to be called essential or necessary in a society because it quit living for the sake of giving. It quit giving for the sake of helping. It had to have all these fiscal responsibility things to give. Like, we can't give to you, we won't have $1 million in the bank. Yeah. In case there's a rainy day. No, they gave it back in the day when, let's say, way back in the 1700, when the Cane Ridge revival happened, and the preachers that came out of that revival, they said, this is crazy to just go to church and sit in a building. They started prison ministry. They started all of the hospital ministries, going in hospitals and praying for people. They decided that the gift of the Holy Spirit was to go out and touch people in the community. Well, guess who did that? Guess who went out on the roads and the highways and prayed for the blind guy in the tree and the lepers on the road? And that was Jesus. You do what Jesus did.
I was going to guess Jesus.
Live the way Jesus lived, doing and giving, and you're going to see the results Jesus saw. People are going to get mad at you. People are going to want to destroy you, but you are also going to change the world.
Yeah. The world.
And you have to be willing to do that. I hope that answers most of the question.
I think it does great. You have something to add,
I just was, as you were speaking and Steve answering, Jesus did point fingers. A lot of, he did.
Yeah, you're right.
He caused a lot of turmoil in the religious. It wasn't really the world. It was the people who were supposed to know, the special knowers, or the Pharisees, the Sadducees. He was brutal with telling them how they should change. Yeah. And I think sometimes we want to look at the world and say you need to change. But the truth is, I think we need to first look at ourselves as a church and say we are the ones that need to change first. And so I just was, as you guys were talking, it's like Jesus was brutal in change to the Pharisees and Sadducees.
To the ones who should know.
Should know. They've been waiting all this time to give their life away, and they do, what do you call about the phylacteries? The other day, they go on and on and
their tassels and their phylacteries.
Yeah, and so it's like for us being able to change just our world. And I think in Christianity, there's a general, we're always talking generalizations, and but if you just change one person, one by one, by the time you get to 40, 50 years, you've changed a lot of people. If you are the person who is true and authentic, and give your life away, like Steve said, it's just give your life away for no apparent reason other than it was given, freely you give. I think you change people just by love.
So as you were talking, I was thinking of the verse where Jesus is calling out people and says, you fool, don't go after the speck in your brother's eye before you first take the log out of your own eye.
Right.
And he doesn't say, and then just leave the speck in your brother's eye. It says, okay, then go on and take the speck now that you can see clearly. But what does that even mean for us today when we're talking about this stuff?
Well, I'm going to defer to Steve because I'm sure he has an answer. Then I'll go after that.
Okay.
So
because I knew he
The
did.
exact question.
So what does that mean to take the log out of our own eye for us today?
Well, so what I like about that, verse that's most often ignored. I mean, I'm surrounded by people who are great spec inspectors,
Yeah.
and
Spec inspectors.
they're always
I like
trying
that.
to get your spec, and
That
they're
wouldn't
always
be,
trying.
you're not talking about me, are you?
Yeah,
No.
you're a spectologist.
I'm a
You're a spectologist.
specialist.
I think you're highly
Inspector
I'm a
Gadget.
accurate.
specialist for your eyes.
You're a spectologist. You've got a high
Let's have some
degree.
respect, all
A
right?
high degree in
Respect.
spectology.
I'm a
So they're always
respecter of specs.
They are always trying to get my spec, and they're always trying to decide what my
You're
specs
so
are.
self-serving
They're looking
right
to
now.
just. They're actually throwing specs at me to hope they catch in my eye. Anyway, the spectologist.
He's kidding. I never do that.
So
tell everybody you're kidding.
back to what I like about this verse that
Tell
people
everybody you're
miss.
kidding.
Yeah, okay. That must be another spec I got. Anyway, so
You're
Are
spectacular.
you kicking him under the
You're
table there?
yeah, she kicked
Spectacular.
it. Yeah, you felt the table go bang bang. That was her.
If you hear that in the podcast,
That was
it's
my
Vicky kicking
shin.
you.
Not kicking me.
Trying to
That
kick
was
Steve
my
hitting the table.
shin. Anyway, that was not true. She didn't kick me.
We're talking spec inspectors.
Okay,
Yes.
so back to the spectology of
Dr.
this world,
Speck.
and really, we should all be loggers instead of spectologists, but
That's
most
good.
of us are spectologists. And the thing I like about it is that here's what Jesus says:
Go ahead.
when you've gotten the log out of your own eye,
boy.
now you're able to get the speck
Good thing I've got the log out of
your
my eye.
brother's eye. That's why Vicky's so good at it, because she's worked so hard on her logging that her spectology
I can see clearly.
is, she sees clearly, yeah. And it's always been helpful when she does that. Good thing this isn't on film.
Oh yeah, definitely don't watch this on YouTube.
Anyway, I like that what he's saying is that you should endeavor to become somebody that can help your brother with the speck in their eye.
It's good.
And to be that, you look at yourself. And again, here we are back to it. You want to change the world? You want to help your brother change? Then focus on changing you. Work on what you need. Work on what there is about you.
It's good.
And so that, and I love that, so that. I love to pick on these words, so that you can help your brother. The reason I'm trying to be good, the reason I'm trying to be holy and humble and life-giving is so I can help others become that. And so here at the Father's house, our call to everyone is to become someone, others, so that you can help others become someone. And I don't want to put a phrase to someone who sings, someone who writes, someone who serves, someone who gives. Just become someone with character, someone with love, someone selfless, so that you can help your brother become selfless. Love so that you can help others love. Be holy. Live your life in a holy, non-judgmental manner. Instead of trying to make an atmosphere where you would feel horrible being unholy around me, I would rather just be holy and you see it and say, I'd like to be like that. How can I be like that? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I would love to help you learn how to be holy. But here's the price. Please don't start unless you know the price. The price is all yourself. You got to die to yourself. You've got to come, your mind must come in control, under control. And you must become a person that if someone did follow you, did look to imitate you, they wouldn't be harmed by it. That's what I want. You get charged by it. Anyway, that's
when I hear that, I'm thinking of these like change movements, and I think of the people that came before us in history who actually took Jesus' call to sacrificially try to change the world, right? And I think, like Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King, he was killed, he was shot, right? In protesting civil rights,
1968.
protesting peacefully,
right?
And Jesus was his example in that. And Mother Teresa didn't say, hey, I'm going to give a bunch of people money so we can go and change India. She's just saying, I'm going to India. And then everybody went with her, right? And learned from her.
And that's the thing, Max. I think oftentimes we want to do that. Come join us. Because, you know, if you want to elicit change, join this group or that group. And honestly, it's probably an individual thing that the Holy Spirit breathes in you, whether or not you should be in Orville or should be in Toronto or should be in Edmonton or whatever. But wherever you are, change should happen. And, you know, Mother Teresa just gave her life down. I mean, she was just in the streets of Calcutta every night, picking up the, you know, same homeless drunk man every night. And, you know, through her, she wasn't trying to say, hey, look at me and come change Calcutta. She just gave her life away. And
but then you couldn't ignore it. Right?
You couldn't ignore it. You know, you look at Billy Graham, and you know, at the end of his life, he said, "I wish I had given more of my life, you know, away." And his life, what he did, so many people are saved because of, you know, he became the change, and he just led him to the change maker, who is Jesus. And if you're not changing, I would be suspicious if you really are saved. If you're not changing every day, if you can't look back and say, I have changed this, or I've changed that person, or I've changed this life, I don't know what's happening, because he's the river of life. And if you're not in the river and you're being swept somewhere, then you're just a swamp. Yeah. And it's nothing's happening. No water's running.
So when that happens and we're clamoring for change, and we have this really righteous desire to see the world change for better, but we're not willing to take that step where it actually hurts us or it costs us something, how does the world see us when we're like that?
Well, it's kind of like all the people, like Jesus said, there'll be people saying, I'm the Christ, there's the Christ, you know. Yeah. People trying to hook on to his thing. And I think how they see it is they tend to make, so let's say there's genuine and not genuine. There's those that hang on, that hook on. They end up coming off as non-genuine, and the world sees them as phonies. But his real shame is then they see Jesus as a phony. Because the people who said they are with him or they are like him were not genuine. I think of Martin Luther King Jr. I was 12 when he died, and so from 10 to 12, and then they played his sermons or his speeches. I have never been more moved in my life. Yeah. I today still believe exactly what he said. I can quote some of his things, and when I hear him, I can quote along with him because I heard him so many times. Yeah. I am truly inspired, but I am in awe of the people on the bridge in Selma. Little old ladies, old men, people facing dogs, men on horseback,
fire hoses,
clubs, hoses. I mean clubs. Yeah. And they shot people too. Young man in a restaurant got shot down. Another person was shot out in the street. I mean, and they still lined up for a peaceful, adamantly saying nobody fights back, nobody throws a stone. There's a peace, and him speaking those words. Well, he gets killed.
That's coming in the opposite spirit, like we were talking about. Right?
They're laying down their life because something was really wrong. And it was. You know, there's so many more than just him. You know, she mentioned Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. What he was up against in the middle of a war to go after the 13th Amendment to free slavery, and what he was after and how he made it, and the enemies he made, again, cost him his life.
Yeah, he was killed, shot.
He was killed for that fight. That was why he was killed, because you took away our whole way of life, right? So Martin Luther King also, and it just goes on and on. How many people we know of, including Jesus being the most important, where the people who come to imitate but don't try to accept the selflessness, the unselfish part of it, the lay down my life, but just try to grab the glory of it.
Yeah, you want you want the rewards without the process.
That's right. Yeah. It always comes off as phony and then diminishes what the true hero did.
The change doesn't stay. I think when this phoniness, the change, it doesn't take.
It really destroys the people it came to help. Yeah. So in every case, you know, things were way better for people in the South after Abraham Lincoln, and then Ulysses Grant came along and got another amendment for the vote, and he really started pushing for their freedoms.
Fought against the KKK.
But then that's where the what happened in the 60s grew out of that resistance, because people just weren't people who were fighting for it just weren't genuine. Yeah. And so the ones fighting against it were able to kind of diminish it to where it looked like it never happened, kind of reverse what happened. Mother Teresa in Calcutta, she was genuine, and people have tried to take advantage of what she did, and it just hasn't come off as genuine.
What's interesting is that
And pretty soon you forget who she is.
Most of the people you're talking about, with the exception of Mother Teresa, she did give her life away, but a lot of them were martyred, for change. And then change really came after they died.
Yeah.
And we're all about, oh my gosh, we can't, we want the bless me club of Christianity. And I just don't see that in the New Testament. Not that we have to look for gloom and doom, and it's just, but if Jesus is our litmus test or our plumb line, and then look at all Paul, Peter, and go down the list, it wasn't just a Pollyanna kind of story where it's just everything's great. The change came through great sacrifice, great tears, and giving their life away. And the 20th century Christianity, in my opinion, we don't want to look at that.
Yeah.
We don't. The change has to come with blood, sweat, and tears. And not for the sake of just blood, sweat, and tears, but for the sake of the gospel, that you give your life away to your brother.
That's right.
And it says, no greater love has anyone than they give his life for one another, for his brother or sister. And I think that's where change really comes. And again, like I said, it could come after we're gone.
Yeah.
They look and so a lot of people, Lincoln, we never knew how great he was until after he died, and King and everything. It's just Martin Luther King. It just goes on and on. So
it really does.
It's just change is such a powerful thing when you give it your all and you're genuine, as Jesus being your guide.
Yeah, it's so hard in this Facebook generation, right? You just sit back and you lob verbal grenades at each other back and forth. And I mean, we have little people comment on the podcast on Facebook underneath, and you have almost no idea what they're actually talking about because they're so full of hate for this group or that group.
So sad.
And you're like, is this guy for us or against us? And it's almost better that he'd be against us because I don't really want him on my team, right? And that sort of thing.
It's our team.
It's like, okay, instead of going out and being change, I'm just going to sit at my computer and I'm going to tell everybody how to live, and it's not going to cost me anything. And that's where we get to the point, in my opinion, where someone like Gandhi can say, I like your Jesus, but I don't like your Christians.
Wow.
And
Ouch.
our job as Christians should be, they like us so much they want to know our Jesus.
Absolutely,
right?
can introduce them.
Right, and that's exactly the point of people who come to imitate and say I'm a Christian but don't live like Jesus lived. They're not looking for the same reason to save their brother. They're in this case, like in India with Gandhi, he's another one. It was peaceful protest, and the Christian nation was afflicting him. They were really afflicting.
Yeah,
they were enslaving them, and they weren't coming in the name of Jesus. They were coming in the name of empire, and so they gave Jesus a black eye to the Indians and the Hindus.
Yeah,
and the whole Indian people of Gandhi's time. And it's exactly right. It just diminishes. When we don't do right, we diminish him. And if today in the American church or the European, Western, type church, I think if we don't do what Jesus did and lay down our lives and love one another as he loved us, we diminish what he did to the world. They look at it as non-essential. It's just not important.
Yeah.
Keep your message to you. They're actually taking down statues of a Europe. What are they? They're taking down statues all over the place right now.
Yeah, Roosevelt and.
Yeah, but they're taking down Jesus statues.
Yeah, they wanted because he's an elitist and he's a
racist. They depict him as like a European look.
Yeah.
And so unless they depict him as a Eastern look, Middle Eastern look, they're tearing down their statues and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think also the Steve said something a few weeks ago. I don't know if it's a church or not, but the fact that sometimes we want to be Judeo-Christians, which he defined it so well as like, in the church there's been a lot of Judeo-Christianity, which is mixing the two covenants, the law and the prophets, with the message of Jesus and forgiveness and mercy and the new covenant. And I think that's where the real rub is. That's where we get in trouble, is when we become Judeo-Christian and we're confused in our message of what changes. In the Old Testament, in the Old Covenant, to elicit change would be to if you take my cow, I'm gonna take your cow, and I'm gonna gouge your eye out if you're gouging mine. And I think sometimes that's what we call change. Is we want vindication or we want judgment,
retribution,
and Jesus said no. So I think when we stay on the new side of the new covenant and just read the words of Jesus, I think that's like really, really change will come.
Yeah.
Change will come when we stand in the new covenant and not be confused with the message of Judeo-Christian. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a rugby fan, so follow me here for a second. Have you guys seen the movie Invictus?
Yes.
It's the South African rugby team, and they won the 1994 World.
Wasn't that through Mandela? Wasn't
yeah.
he there?
So Mandela really pushed having blacks and whites in South Africa. They had newly elected him, gotten rid of apartheid, and he really wanted the whole nation to come together through rugby, and he had spent more than 20 years on Robben Island in prison, and if anybody could come out as seeking retribution with a
for reparations,
giant majority behind
it,
and instead of doing that, he unified the country through rugby and lots of other things, but that was just one of the things. That's the story in this movie, is about rugby. I'd recommend it. It's really cool.
I'd like to see it again. It's been years since I've seen it.
But it's great. Just he could have sought in that moment to release people on the violent oppressors who were violent oppressors, right? And history probably wouldn't have looked down on him for that, but we wouldn't remember him as somebody who actually brought about change.
That's right.
In South Africa
through love.
Through love, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he actually learned from Dr. King, and he learned from Gandhi, and Dr. King obviously learned from Jesus, and now we're talking about, and not like it's there anymore, because I don't know that the leaders there are following Mandela's example, but there's that self-sacrifice, and I'm going to give my life for the change, whether I see it or not. Right?
That's right. Is he still alive?
No, Mandela passed away. Yeah,
a few years ago.
I think a couple of years ago, 2 or 3.
Couldn't remember.
So I want to bring it full circle to you guys in Orville, and I hear stories a lot about, well, if you would have been here when we first started, this is the place, this was that place, and I'm here now, and it's kind of rough, but even in the last 2 years, it seems like it's gotten better. Like the alleys are cleaner. There's more houses that are nicer. There's and maybe it's just I'm getting to know people, but it even seems like change is still marching on.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know, how did you guys enact Jesus's example of laying your lives down to change your community?
It's funny that you say that, because I was just I was at our 91 acres the Father's house has, and we're starting a summer camp. And I was standing, and we have a lake with a dock and whatever that little
new yesterday, right?
You knew yesterday, and I was standing there, and I was thinking back of the 21 years we've been here, 21 years, and I was just like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
How do we have what Jesus has given us? Because you come here, we have a gym, which is like the nicest gym in Orville. Yeah. It's not like a little Holiday Inn gym. It's got 2,000 members. We have the best boutique I've ever seen. We have a frozen yogurt shop, and I'm standing here on this lake, which will be also a playground, which will also be a summer camp, which will also be
football field,
wrestling,
food bank, distribution center for the whole county.
It's where our granddaughter, we had her what's it called, memorial.
Yeah, celebration.
I'm standing there, and I'm just thinking, Lord, how did you do this? I mean, we're really nothing special, and it was just saying yes. It just was doing the next right thing, and in line upon line, precept upon precept, I can literally look back at the 21 years we've been in Orville and see that clearly. In the moment, 21 years about Father's house.
22, but go ahead.
Anyway, the 22 years, he's a log inspector.
Father's house is 22.
Whatever.
In Orville,
it feels like 21.
It's 29.
So standing on the dock of the bay, watching the time pass by, Otis Redding.
Roll away.
It's just amazing. Just saying yes. Just continuing to do the next right thing. Because honestly, we could never have thought about building a summer camp or having anything of what we have back 22 years ago when we started, when we were just sweeping glass in the middle of a street so kids wouldn't cut at their foot because they're barefoot.
Yeah.
Or giving away clothes at a yard sale. We would never, I mean, maybe Steve is a visionary. He might have seen this. I think just saying yes to the next right thing, even though it's like, well, it's not my call. Well, that wasn't our call. It was just necessary. It was a need that happened, that needed to happen in our town. So we just did it because we could. So that would be my answer, just doing the next right thing.
Yeah.
What would yours be?
So the exact question you wanted?
Well, I wanted to change it a little bit for you. I want to know,
because I answered it so well.
I wanted to know
totally.
what changed first.
No more to
was
say.
it you guys or was Orville? What changed first?
What changed first is
were you the change that Orville needed, or
Jesus.
was it kind of? I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's Jesus, but you were being used by Jesus.
Yes.
Right?
I think Jesus is what they needed, and he allowed us to work for him. And so, I applied for jobs sometimes, and youth pastor jobs, and didn't get them. But
While we're in Orville.
But I applied for him, and he always hires me. He always uses me. So I think the willingness that we grew up with, that we got married and kind of grew up as baby Christians, and this willingness, just we owe him everything. So when I'm sitting there saying, I don't want to move to Orville, and he says, I want you to move to Orville, and I said, okay, if you want me to move to Orville, now I have nothing I want more than to move to Orville.
No. Yep.
So then we're in Orville. One day later, I moved to Orville. We're there, and I think he's what they need, but he moved me here because I'm willing. So I started built a business. Sharing Jesus everywhere I went, getting known by a lot of people because my business took off. Ministering and leading worship in a church 4 years, here in Orville, and that kind of gives you, some notoriety, some name. But I think the question, what came first, it's really God's hand. I've looked at the history of Orville, and I have seen that he wanted to do this every day Orville existed. And some people did it for a little while and then fell off. Some people moved away. Some people said, oh, this is unfair. Nothing good will ever come from Orville.
Yeah.
The surrounding cities would say, would you ever want to live in Orville? There's a bad attitude towards Orville with all these different things.
It's actually changing now.
And so what changed first, I think, is that Vicki and I didn't quit. God's will was always for Orville. Orville always had the resources. Orville always, it is nestled in between a river and some mountains, and it's gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's gorgeous. It's just like, it's got everything. It's got valley stuff. It's not far to the redwoods. It's not far to the ocean.
Fishing.
It's got the best fishing and fisheries and
Nice
fruit
lake.
and vegetables and farming land, the richest farming land in the world.
We're so close to everything,
It
too.
is really, and what's really cool about Orville, it's right in line with this wind, this delta breeze comes right into Orville. So it's even cooled by something almost godly.
Yeah.
Off the ocean, comes up from the San Francisco Bay through the delta, and we're right in line, and we get that breeze. And so it's really strange. Like Redding doesn't get that breeze.
Yeah.
We get that breeze. Chico doesn't get that breeze. We get that breeze. And so there's just, God's blessing has always been here in the richest, amazing form, the gold that they've found in Orville. I believe that Orville has suffered from a selfishness. When we asked God what's wrong with Orville, he said selfishness. And me and Vicki came, and we're just not selfish. We share our house. We always give whatever we have. And we serve. And I think that many others have and do. But I'm talented at a lot of different things. Vicki is gifted at a lot of things. Just really, she said we're nothing special, but I kind of took exception. I know for a fact she is, and she's very special.
And I think you are too.
Thank you. That was a necessary
I
return.
That'd
right?
be kind of awkward had I not said anything.
I know, but I am actually very talented.
You are you can't.
So
there's
I
nothing
can
that you can't
I can
do.
figure out how to do things.
He's
right?
a genius.
But it's not that God suddenly favored us. It's that he always favored Orville and all of the people in Orville. And I believe Vicki and I just stayed the course. I think early on in our ministry, someone asked me, why is it such a struggle? And I said,
Oh,
because
my.
very few people will stay the course through hard times. They're really in it for the reason that what I came here to receive. I came here to be fed. And I don't think that's a common word in Christianity. Are you being fed? Well, are you eating? How do you not be fed if the Bible is being opened?
Come on.
How do you not be fed
Read
if Jesus
Jesus
is being preached?
That's
Now,
right.
that's the answer. If you're not being fed, it's because Jesus isn't being preached. So I think that's the difference. And I don't know how to answer the question, what came first. I think Orville has always been a gem, a crown jewel to pick.
But you didn't expect Orville to change while you sat in your house on the hill and did nothing for
No.
I
didn't expect
it
any
was
change.
through
Day
your
by day.
blood, sweat, and tears, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe
22 years of
wholeheartedly
us.
that God does very little without us.
Yeah.
That he wants to do a ton of stuff, and he does very little without us. I also don't think he uses one person to do everything. And so Orville will change a little because Vicki and I are talented and she's gifted and loving, and we're all in, and we go and we love the ones that come here. And Vicki's really good at loving people. Like, I don't mean this in a negative way towards our people, but she's really good at loving misfits, people that didn't fit in other places. And we collect a crowd.
You're a Mr. Fit.
and we serve them, and we give to them, and we take care.
We mother them.
We
father
welcome
them.
them home. We share our house, our pool, our life with them, and we walk alongside with them and teach them. And I think that I've grown. I've had times where I thought, man, is this going to go on? This is going to go on forever. But every time we talk about it, I feel this charge that, I have no desire to leave. I'm not going anywhere. I'm called. Can you imagine if I went somewhere else and he didn't use me? I mean, he's using me here. I'm not moving. I found a place where he'll use me, and I don't think that mentality is everywhere. I'm not here for what it gives me. I'm really here for what I can give and who I can show. I want to show Jesus to the world. I want to speak for Jesus to the world. And I'm not here to receive. I do receive. I receive ridiculous.
Yep.
I receive way beyond what I deserve or
But
ask or think.
you were here before you were receiving.
Correct.
And you'll be here if you don't receive
Correct.
anymore.
I was receiving from the moment on March 10th, 1975. He's been pouring into me. I mean, I have stories. I tell them all the time. He has just been taking care of me, using me, empowering me, just telling me the truth. He actually leads me in the truth. I mean, where do you find that? Yeah. Only in Jesus.
But
and it's in every case, it's giving.
that's right.
And so I think that if you live in Timbuktu and you make great cupcakes, you should be out there using your cupcakes to spread the word of Jesus. And don't grow weary in it.
Keep going.
Don't grow weary. Use what you got and go spread the love of Jesus. Don't go tell them how much he loves them. Tell them how much he loves you and how much you love him. And then say, you can have it too. You want to know his love? Let me show you.
Stay the course.
So that's how Orville changes. And I think Southside is changing because when we first came here, I did not see a lot of Christians outside the four walls. And I've heard us say this on this program before. And I won't take credit for everybody. All I know is I created a trend. What do you call it? A pressure, like a current.
Yeah.
Like I honestly met people who've actually admitted to me that I made them mad. Because I was always going, always doing, and they felt like such losers standing next to me. And I never once called them a loser. I never once told them they're a loser. But now they're going full blast because they just didn't want to look bad next to me. But then they found out how good that is.
How good it feels.
And you just, across the city of Orville, the people have different reasons and why God sent them here. But I found out a lot of people got sent here to do exactly what I did, just work unselfishly and preach the gospel. And pretty soon you start to create a trend, a current, a
Positive
movement.
peer pressure.
And that's why Orville's changing, is because the churches in mass are outside the four walls.
It's really, really cool because when you alluded to Orville has had such a bad reputation. Like we'd be on a cruise in the middle of the Caribbean, and we say we're from Orville, California, and people would be they just crinkle their nose up and say, "Why?"
Why?
And they don't even know Orville. It's just it was a spiritual condition.
Orville. In this negative tone.
And and we're in Butte County, which is we are the seat. And I often laugh and say Chico is most people have heard of Chico, California, and everybody is like, I used to say, Orville's kind of like the illegitimate sister of Chico. They don't really want to talk about her, but they, you know, she's there. And now what's really cool is that now, because nobody talks about Orville like they used to. It's changing. So Steve was a builder for many years, and Chico never ever hired him to build one house.
I never built a house in Chico.
Not one house, and he's built over 200 or 300 houses.
A lot.
But now what I'm hearing, it's really cool. People are moving from Chico to Oroville.
Yeah.
And they're saying, we love Oroville. And the jewel of Oroville is the people. The people in Oroville are just wonderful. Of course, there's the down and outers, and of course our staff is filled with wonderful down and outers who became up and goers,
up and comers,
and comers, and the Jesus Judge totally renovated their lives. So we love them, but it's so cool. 22 years later of us being down here, that Chico's moving to Oroville. Yeah. They're like, we don't like Chico; it doesn't feel safe, but Oroville feels safe, and it's pretty cool that even through this coronavirus, the state of California was totally shut down, and we were the first ones to open. Yeah. And I think it's the Spirit of the Lord.
And I think every Christian that decides to do what we're talking about it's kind of like a soup. And you kind of taste it, and you go, oh, it needs salt. And you put a little salt in it, it changes the whole soup.
And they said Max and Sharia from Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so every Christian has the ability to be salt in a soup and change the flavor.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, you know as well as I do, you can't just keep putting salt in something, but it's a metaphor. So it's flavor. It'll change the whole soup. And I think every Christian alive is supposed to be like Jesus and supposed to be becoming somebody who can help others change.
That's right.
And that's where change comes from, is self-sacrifice, self-commitment, toeing the line, doing it the way he did it.
That's right thing.
Not doing it without genuine nature, not doing it without a whole heart so that you make him look bad, but doing it with the pleasure of privilege to make him look good. You say, I'm just a poor facsimile, but what you really want to know is not me, it's Jesus. You know, that old saying about, I've never met anybody, like you said, Gandhi. I've never met anyone that met Jesus and didn't like him. I've met a lot of people that met us and didn't like Jesus. Yeah. And so it's really how we represent him. It's exactly that thing. When we try to represent him and do what he did, we end up being ungenuine. If we're not genuine and heartfelt in our efforts to serve him and our gratefulness to be chosen by him, we end up giving him a bad name. And
well, I think that's a good place to stop. And I'd encourage people who want to learn more. We've got our church online. You can listen.
Yeah, come join us.
You can join us on Church Online. We're actually trying something soon, and maybe it's already happening. We want to have Church Online members, people from all over the world.
Wow.
Who, you have your church at home, but you wanna tune into Church Online and say, I'm here, just like I'm at church, but I'm
Is that your idea?
In Australia. No, it's some smarter people than myself.
Wow.
I think Sarah.
It wasn't my idea. What are you talking about?
Sarah Budd's idea, I think.
That's a great idea.
So join us online, and you can watch Steve, and you can hear Vicky from the front row, because Vicky usually, Steve's mic usually picks her up, calling him out in the front row.
Spectology.
Spectacular.
Spectology.
I appreciate your time, and
we love you,
you
Max.
guys next
it's always
time.
good.
Thanks.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, man.